Hey, my name is Jay, and today I'm going to show you how to build a classroom digital portfolio using some Google Apps tools. We'll start with some of the key ingredients. So the first thing we'll need to do is we'll need a way to collect information about the articles that students are working on. We'll need a place to manage all that data. Then we'll want to visualize it in some way so that students in the classroom can see other students' portfolios and projects. And we're going to share the results on a classroom webpage. So we're going to use Google Forms as a collection tool for students to submit their projects. And we're going to wire that up to a Google Sheet. So we have a spreadsheet containing all of that information. And then we're going to add awesome tables on top of that Google spreadsheet and build some views, some card-based views that'll show us the projects that students are working on. And once we've got the views and filter set up, then we're going to embed it on a web page. In my case, we're using a Weebly site. Weebly's a great free web tool that you can sign up for and use and embed lots of cool stuff with Google on. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Google Drive and I'm going to create a new Google form. Okay, and essentially I'm going to add some fields that I want to capture for this portfolio. So we'll call this our classroom digital portfolio, and we're going to add some questions. So the first thing we're going to ask is, what's the student's name? And I'm going to leave this as singular or plural, and I'm going to change this to a short answer. Okay, and we'll make that required. Another question we're going to ask is, what's the project name? So we want to know what project students are working on. The next field, we're going to do a project description, and that can be a paragraph. That can be a little bit longer. And then after that, we're going to, I forgot to do room number. We're going to do room number because that'll allow us to use this across multiple rooms. And I'm going to move that up to be the first question. Okay, we're starting to collect some of the data that we need to build our portfolio. Okay, so we've got the project name, project description, student name, room number. Now we want to capture some of the work. So we need a place to do that. So we're going to capture a project URL, and that's actually just going to be basically a website URL. And then we're also going to capture an image URL. And this way we can use the image on our card view. You'll see what we're going to do with that later, but we'll capture it now. Okay, so we've got student name, project description, image URL, project URL. Okay, that's a good start. If later on you decide to add additional fields, that's fine. You can always go back and update your Google form. We're going to, okay, gave that a nice name. Great. And now what I want to do is, let's change the settings. We're going to restrict this to CPS users, so we'll keep the permissions of this pretty tight. If you wanted to open this up at some point, you could. You would just need to change the permissions here, but by keeping these permissions tight, it'll allow the students some privacy, which is always a good thing. Okay. I'm going to hit save, and let's take a look at our form. So let's see what it looks like. So I hit the preview button, and it shows me my form. And I just realized I've got an issue here. So I didn't set the field type properly. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to edit this form. I'm going to fix that. So I'm going to go back here. I want this to be a short text as well. So we're going to change this from a multiple choice to a short answer, as well as the URL, the image URL. Okay, great. Now let's take a look and see what it looks like. Okay, great. All right, so we have our form that students can now use to submit their projects when they're ready. So why don't we test this out? Why don't we, let's simulate a student. And okay, so let's say I'm in room 101, or yeah, let's say 104. And my student, I'll simulate the student. My name is Mia. Go. My project name is Ancient Egypt. And for project description, about Egypt. Field trip to a field museum. So you can get the idea of how students would use this. Okay, so for the project URL, what we're going to do is we're going to post a URL from Google Drive. So let's say your students are working in Google and they've got all their files stored in one place. In this case, I've got a test folder for Mia here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on Mia's folder. And this would be the student basically doing this. And I'm going to choose Get Shareable Link. Okay. And we're going to turn on link sharing so that we can actually actually view this thing. Okay, so then I'm going to right click and copy this link. And this is the link we're going to use in the form. So that's the project URL. For the image URL, we've got in the drive, we've got an image here, and we can also get a shareable link on the image. So I'm going to do that and copy that, and we're going to paste that in for the image. Paste. Okay, so we're going to submit that form. Okay, so we've submitted our assignment, our portfolio project, and now we have some sample data. So let's go back to the form, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to the settings, and by the way, you can see here the number of responses, and if you wanted to review those responses, you can look at them, and as they start coming in, you'll see all kinds of stuff. This number will rise, and then you can scroll through each one individually, or you can check out the summary view, which is pretty cool. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, so basically we've built our data capture tool. The next thing we need to do is we need to get all this data into a Google spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on Create Spreadsheet, and we're going to say create a new spreadsheet. So I'm going to click Create. And what this is going to do is it's going to take all the response data and it's going to create a Google spreadsheet. So anytime a student submits a request, a new row will get added to this spreadsheet. It's kind of cool. Okay, so we've got, you'll notice all of our fields in here that we created on our Google form. And so now what we're going to do, now that we have our spreadsheet, is we want to wire this up to something called Awesome Table. Awesome Table is going to allow us to render this information in cool ways on our webpage. Okay. In order to do that, the first step to use with Awesome Tools is to create a second row just below the first row. And the first row basically contains all the field names. The second row is what we're going to use to configure filter settings. And you'll see what I mean as we go. But what we're going to do here is I'm also going to change the view to be frozen on the second row since we added a new row. Okay, so first thing we need to do when we want to configure our spreadsheet to work with Awesome Table is we need to figure out which fields we want to show. So for me, I'm not really interested in the timestamp, so I'm going to mark that as hidden. And I'm also going to say no filter. So that what that means basically is we don't want to filter on time, and we also don't want to show time. The room number, however, is something that we would want to filter on. So I'm going to basically say something called category filter. And you'll see what I mean. You'll see how this works later. We'll get into that, but I'm basically going to assign a filter setting for each column in our spreadsheet, and then we're going to create an Awesome Table, and then we're going to configure it. So, okay. So for student names, I'm going to use something called a CSV filter. That stands for comma separated value filter. And the reason I'm going to use that instead of a category filter here is if there was a project with multiple students and they were provided in this list with a comma separated value format, we'd be able to filter across multiple students. That's a more advanced feature, which we'll get into, but that's what we'll do there. And then for this one, I'm going to choose category filter, project description. We're not going to filter on project description, although we could if we wanted to. Project URL, we're going to say hidden, no filter. We're going to say the same thing for the URL. Okay, so now we've got our spreadsheet ready to go. I also like to just bold some of these things and add a little slice of color here just to differentiate the settings from the data, and that's just helpful there. Actually, that color's a little too dark. I'm going to lighten that up just a tad. Well, I guess that's as light as it goes. Okay. All right. So the next thing I need to do is I need to go in and I need to copy the URL of this spreadsheet. And then I'm going to go to my Awesome Table, which is awesometables.com. And essentially, we're going to build something that looks similar to this. This is basically how our portfolio will look. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a new view, a new Awesome Table view. And to do that, you click the plus sign, and you'll need to be signed in to Awesome Table with your Google credentials. So if you haven't signed in, you'll need to do that. It'll ask you to log in. And once you've logged in, you may get an authorization screen that says, hey, Awesome Table wants to authorize the various settings to be able to access certain things with your Google account, and you'll need to accept that if you want to use Awesome Tables. It's pretty harmless, but if you don't feel comfortable accepting that, then that's understandable. We just won't be able to do what we're about to do if you don't authorize Awesome Table to access your Google account. Okay, so the next step is to configure Awesome Table and wire it up to our Google spreadsheet, which is the reason that I copied the URL. So I'm going to paste it in here, and I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet, and we're going to just to keep this consistent, I'm going to copy the name of that tab. Actually, I'm going to rename this to say projects. Okay, that'll just be easier. And then I'm going to go back to Awesome Tables. So this is where you specify which sheet inside the Google URL it needs to look at. So we called our sheet projects. That's great. The other thing we'll need to do is check the range of data. So in this case, we're going to go from A to G. Okay. So this is saying A to H. I'm going to leave it at A to H since there is an empty field there. It's fine. It's not going to do anything with it. But we may want to add another field here called show on web. And I'll do that now. And that way we'll have that for later. Okay, great. And I'm actually going to set this to be hidden, no filter. I'll show you how that's going to work later as well. Okay, great. So we've got our sheet configured. The next step is to choose our view. We'll start with a table just to see what it looks like. Okay. Format, I usually don't change anything in here. We'll just leave that alone. Advanced parameters, for now we're going to leave that alone. Under general settings, we're going to give this a name. So we're going to call this our digital classroom portfolio. Okay. And I'm going to save it. This is a very important step. You have to save these changes. When you do, it's going to refresh, and then it's going to show your spreadsheet down below with your data. And this is where the filters come in. So you saw that we were in our spreadsheet setting for each column what type of filter settings we wanted to enable. The reason we were doing that is so when we create our view using Awesome Table, those filters show up here, and that's really helpful especially as the data set grows. As you have more and more rows in your spreadsheet, student submissions, you'll want to be able to filter on different things. And so we just started with a couple of simple filters: filter by room number, filter by student name, and filter by project name. So that's really useful as you start having students who are working on multiple projects throughout the year and they're submitting all of their stuff here. You'll be able to basically filter and show, submissions for a specific project or a specific student or a specific room, which is kind of cool. Okay, so we're going to make this a little more interesting. What I'd like to do is change this layout to be the card-based layout that we saw. And to do that, we need to go into our view. Oh, I forgot one more step that's really important that we'll need to do. I'm going to go back to our spreadsheet. For this to work on a web page, we're going to need to share our Google Sheet. And to do that, we're going to click on this thing that says Get Shareable Link. Okay. And it's going to basically create a shareable link, and it's going to say anyone at Chicago Public Schools with the link can view. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to choose More, and I'm actually going to change that to say anyone with the link. So anyone in the world who has the link to this can view it. And that's needed so that Awesome Table, which is not connected to Google, it's basically going to use the URL to connect and pull down this data. So we have to at least have this setting, especially if you plan to share your view outside of your classroom. You could, if you wanted to just set it to CPS, but then it would require every user to be logged in with their Google account in order to see the data. So it's just easier to choose this one. So I'm going to choose that one. Now, just beware, if you're publishing this data out on the internet, make sure you're not publishing sensitive information. So, don't publish spreadsheets that have student addresses, student phone numbers, social security numbers. All of that stuff is not something you'd want to share publicly to the world. Okay, so we've set our settings. We're going to go back to the awesome table. I'm going to go to the view, and I'm going to change this to do cards view. Okay, and for our cards view, basically we get to choose the number of columns and the number of rows. So let's say we'll do 4 across and 4 down. Great. And then I'm going to click save. So that should change to a card-based layout, and it does, and it's only showing the first column. Okay, so now that we've got our card-based layout, we're going to need to go in and customize how this card gets displayed. And the easiest way to do that is to go up to one of their examples in the documentation. So I'm going to open this in a new tab, and I'm going to show you where to go. Awesome Table has great documentation and great examples. I'm going to choose templates from their website, and then basically you can find all kinds of examples of how your data could look. In this case, the one that I've chosen is this card view Marvels, and I've got a copy of that right here. So I'm going to pull that up. So what's different about this Google spreadsheet is it has a second sheet called template. So we're going to need that. That's really helpful. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy that sheet called template. And we're going to add that into our classroom sheet. So I'm going to click the plus sign, and I'm going to rename this to say template. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to paste the data. And we can fix the formatting of that. So that's a really important step. That's how you're getting essentially some of the rendering that you're seeing there. Okay. The other step that we need to do is we need to go into the Awesome Table advanced settings, and then we need to specify the range for the template. So by calling the Google Sheet template, we can just basically say it's the sheet name, and then we're going to set the range, which is A1 to B1. Actually, it's B2, right? It's A1 to B2. Take a look at that. A1 to B2. Okay. So that's what we did. Okay. So now that we've done that, we're going to go back to Awesome Tables. We're going to hit Save. Okay. And we're going to see how this looks. Okay, so we're getting there. It didn't actually do what I had hoped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the settings for, I have a view for that other spreadsheet that I was using as a template, and that was called Awesome Table Photo Gallery. So here it is, Photo Gallery Demo. So I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to make sure that we have all the settings in place that we need. I'm going to click on Edit this view. So you see the data range there. We're going to go to the view. Okay, so they've got 3 columns, 5 rows. Under format, okay, we're going to look at, here it is. So that looks right. I'm going to copy and paste this just to be safe, because sometimes that's a little bit tricky. Okay, I'm going to go back to our classroom. Digital classroom portfolio. Settings for awesome tables. I'm going to click edit this view. Under advanced, and I'm just going to paste that in. I think that's what we had there. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's take a look. So we only have 1 entry. Okay. So let's go take a look at that template and see what it's doing. I think I know what's going on. Our column here is called image URL, and our column on the sample was just called URL. So what that means is we're going to have to go and we're going to have to tweak the template a little bit. And actually, I'm going to make just unhide this as well, so that we can actually show these things. Okay. So our column is called image URL. And so here it is. So basically, we just need to change the name there to be image URL. Actually, you know what? That's the open. So that one's, we want to open the project URL there. The image URL is in this image tag here. Okay. So let's see how that works. I'm going to click back to our data. I'm going to go back to our awesome table view. I'm going to hit refresh. Okay. Still not showing the image the way I had hoped. So let's go back to our template here. So we've got something that says photos, card content. Okay. So I think what we need to do is we need to add this column to our spreadsheet as well. Because I'm not seeing that here. So I'm going to say paste. And I'll just call this projects. And then we'll call that cards content. Just fix my formatting there. Okay. All right. So let's see how that goes. Okay. Still not showing the image, but let's see. I want to see if when we click this, if it takes us to the new window. It doesn't look like that's working either. So let's see, what else are we missing here? So we've got our URL, we've got our photos, which is our card view. And then over here we've got, so our column name is called photos, and in the template, we need to make sure that that matches. So let's go back to our template. This should say projects. And that should match our cards content column. All right, let's try this again. Huh, still not there. Interesting. Okay. So let's try one more thing. We've got that. Filter. Let's go take a look at this code. Card content. Project URL, image URL, caption. We don't have a caption. So they had a caption in their. That's what was showing the title. Okay, so that could be it. So if we go back to ours, what do we want our caption to be? We want that to be the project name. So we just need to change that in our template. We need that to say project name. There we go. Okay, so let's try that again. Let's see if that fixes it. Let's do this. I'm going to change this back to the table view. And hit save. Okay, so it's showing all of our data. Project name, project description, project URL, image URL. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to test those links to make sure that those pull up the things that we expect it to do. Interesting. Let me switch my account to CPS. So it did bring up her project for portfolio, which is great. Okay. Let's go back to the spreadsheet and see what happens when we click on the image. Okay, so that pulled up the image. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Let's try something else. Let's go in, back to cards. We're going to say 3 columns, rows. I'm going to choose advanced settings. Okay, I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to our example and see what's going on here. So our sample has a date filter on the timestamp. Interesting. That is interesting. And that actually is kind of cool. So I'm going to put that in. I know that's a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think that's helpful to have. Okay, so we have our category filter. No filter on that. Showing the web is hidden. New projects. There. Cards content. So the project name is there. That's the project. That's style. I wonder why this isn't working. Oh, interesting. It's showing the first column, and now we have a date range, which is kind of cool too, actually. In our case, we've only received one entry. So the card view is working, but not quite the same way we expected it to work. I'm going to go back to their example and take a look at one more thing. If we go to the photo gallery demo, let's see if we're missing any additional settings. So we've got our spreadsheet set up, got our views set up, format is normal. Templates look good. General settings, okay. So what happens with this, when I click this, it opens the link in a new browser window, which is what we expect to happen with our list view, but it's not working the way I expected. Let's see what happens if I click this. Something's not quite right with the template. Caption URL photos. Photos. Style. Maybe it needs to be called photos. Let's try that. Let's see if that does anything. Okay, so here's what we're going to do while we troubleshoot. I'm going to change this back to a table view. I'm going to hit save. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire this up to a web page, and then we'll come back to figure out what's going on with the card rendering. The way to do that is you go to share, and in the share there's an embed, and when you click on that, it essentially highlights this embed code. I'm going to copy that embed code, and I'm going to paste that into a Weebly page that I'm going to create. So I'm on a Weebly site. I'm going to click on new page. I'm going to create a standard page. I'm going to call this digital portfolio. And get rid of the header there. And we're going to hit save. Okay. And then on that page, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a title tag. And we're going to just call this digital portfolio. I'll say class classroom portfolio. Okay. Then we're going to drag over this embed code option. And I'm going to paste in the embed code from the Awesome Tables site. Okay. And then I'm going to click Publish. We can take a look at what this looks like. Let's go back to my site. And let's just see if we can, pages published. And there's the digital portfolio link. You can see that blue bar that tells us it's loading. Okay, so we've got our spreadsheet embedded into our web page. So this is basically the place where your other students in the class can go to look to see what the classroom's up to. Let's say Mia's classmates want to learn all about her project that she submitted. They can go to the website, and this could be just your classroom webpage, and they can basically go there and browse the gallery. So once we get the card views figured out, essentially what's going to happen is as students submit their projects using the Google form that we created, it's automatically going to show up on the classroom webpage. Okay, and that's pretty cool. Because basically once you set this up, it's automatic. There's really no coding to be done after that. Basically, as throughout the year, you can have this open for the entire year as students add to it. More and more stuff gets in there, and that's where the filters really come in handy, because you'll have lots of different projects, you'll have lots of different students contributing, and you may want to just take a look at Mia's work, or you may want to just look at a certain homeroom, or you may want to look at a certain date range. So that's where those filters are really helpful. So the nice thing about this is essentially the web page is now driving off of the data that gets added to this Google spreadsheet. And that's a pretty powerful concept. You've basically built a data-driven web page with a Google spreadsheet as the backend to store all the data, and you're using the Google form as the data collection tool. So you've basically built your own custom dynamic data-driven application using just a few Google tools, and that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool and exciting. Okay, so let's go back and see if we can troubleshoot and figure out why our card views are not working. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to change this to say cards. And I'm going to hit save. And it's still only showing the date. Interesting. So to me, that seems like we have a typo somewhere. And it's probably in the template section. It's hard to show all this. We have photos, we have style. Cards content. Cards content. Something I did notice is they don't have any extra columns, so maybe we should get rid of some of our extra columns here. going to close up some of these. Make it a little bit easier for us to see. I'm going to turn on text wrapping here, which is kind of helpful. And the other thing I always like to do is I like to highlight, and I like to center justify every row item. That's just really helpful. Projects. It's picking up the row item, but it's not showing the image, and it's also not linking. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to come back to this and create a separate video once I get this working. So we're going to end it here, but essentially just to review what we did to make this all work, we set up a Google form to collect the portfolio information from students. We wired that up to a Google Sheet so that all that information is visible on a Google Sheet. And then we configured our Google Sheet to work with Awesome Tables, and we created a view on Awesome Tables. And then once we had our view configured, we embedded that Awesome Table view onto our web page, and that gave us the ability to see the digital classroom portfolio right from here. So that's how it works, and that's a pretty cool idea. So hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, shoot me a message or check out the Awesome Table webpage, awesometable.com. They have a wealth of great documentation and helpful resources, as well as videos, tutorials. And if you're looking for additional guidance on how to use Awesome Tables, YouTube is a great resource. There's a number of other folks who have posted videos on how this all works, how they've used Awesome Tables. And there's some really cool examples out there. I also have created a few examples of my own on my webpage. So if you check these out, I created 6 different examples. I've got a book inventory. So if you have books in your classroom and you want to keep track of them, this is a great tool for that. You basically can keep track of all your books in a Google spreadsheet and then show them on your web page. And then I also built an event listing with card-based layout. I've got video library. I did some really cool stuff with maps. You can build FAQs. So let's say you have FAQs for parents or FAQs for your students. You can post them to your website and then make updates to your Google spreadsheet. And as long as once you've wired up your Google spreadsheet with Awesome Table to your web page, once you make changes to the spreadsheet, the web page is automatically updated. So I'm going to end it here. Thanks for joining me.